Rather than spending hundreds of hours of your own time making over 50,000 cold calls like I have in my 4-year software sales career, promoting from SDR to a senior account executive, that's what I am right now, facing thousands of rejections, I'm gonna share with you the 3 lessons I have learned that you can apply to your life, job, career to find more success sooner rather than later. If you watch until the end of the video, I'm also going to share with you my battle-tested cold call opening line that will diffuse and break the ice with any prospect, no matter what product service you're selling, no matter what your name is, no matter how much experience you have. It works, believe me, trust me, and I think you're really going to like it. Lesson number 1 is speed and volume. The best analogy I can share is think of yourself as a river. You're flowing water. You are relentless. Over time, water erodes land. Think about the Grand Canyon. That big gap was made by water. You don't see it happening in the moment, but over time, water is very powerful. You are very powerful in your cold calling approach. They say sales is a numbers game. You will erode your prospects over time with relentless volume. When reps come to me and they say, Trent, can you help me with cold calling? To put in perspective how challenging it actually is, there are 4 Moneyball metrics that we can use to actually quantify how challenging your job actually is. And reps come to me and they say, well, I've just had a bad day, I'm not setting any meetings this week. You always need to look at your success and define it in the context of large numbers, because if you just make 100 calls, it's such a small sample size. You need to look at 1,000 calls and actually look at your metrics to say, am I doing well? Am I not doing well? And the way you can define volume is take 1,000 calls over the course of a week, 2 weeks, a month, however many calls you're making, the more calls, the better. Answer rate of the amount of calls you're making, what percentage of prospects, customers are actually answering the phone. A good answer rate should be around 6 to 7%. So if you make 1,000 calls, that means you are actually having about 60 live conversations. Of those live conversations, what is your set rate? Meaning the percentage of live conversations that you actually set up a meeting with that the prospect customer tentatively agrees to. A good set rate is around 15%. So that means if you're setting 15% of 60 meetings, that might be like 4.5. I'm not exactly sure the numbers on that. Bottom line, you want a 15% set rate. So if you have 100 live conversations, you would set 15 meetings. Of those meetings you set, there is show rate, meaning what percentage of the prospect customer actually shows up to the meeting. You want a 90% show rate. You don't want to be taking the time to set meetings and them not actually showing up. And there's a lot of ways you can do to improve the show rate, which I'll talk about at another time if you want to hear that. And next is conversion rate. Of those initial meetings you have, how many of them actually convert to qualified opportunities? And you want that to be around 75, 80%. So when you take in perspective, you're making 1,000 cold calls, you're only recognizing like 3 to 4 qualified opportunities, whatever it may actually be. So put in perspective the volume it actually takes to be successful and be relentless over time. And one of the best ways to improve your volume is to operate with speed and urgency. When I first started my sales career as an SDR, I would sit at the desk, I would look at Salesforce, I would research the website, I'd look at the company LinkedIn, and I'd say, I have all the information I need to make the call. I'd press the call and they wouldn't answer, believe it or not. The girl next to me who had been doing it a while, she said, Trent, what are you doing? I said, I'm preparing. And she said, that is the worst thing you could possibly be doing. Press the call button and figure out what to say after that. And that approach really helped me. Now I block off time and I just sit down and I press call as fast as I possibly can. And I'm focused on speed more so than trying to figure out this grand message because they're probably not going to answer in the first place. Volume, speed, numbers game, that is lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is to make the ask. Whether you like it or not, the sun is going to come up tomorrow. The sun is actually partially ruining the lighting in this video. I can't help it because the sun is up there. And whether I wanted it to be up there or not, the sun is going to be up there. When you are on a call with a prospect customer, whether they like it or not, you need to make the ask for their time. You need to be there, you need to be present. And if you don't make the ask, you have no chance of actually setting the meeting. And when I was in my first year cold calling, I started to get better at figuring out when to call, how to find direct lines, the right people to be calling. And I started getting people on the phone, but I was never setting meetings. And then I went to a coaching session and I said, well, are you asking for the meeting? Are you setting up time with them? And I said, you know what? I don't think I am. I think I'm just rambling. I'm trying to add value. I don't exactly know what to say. So I got a Post-it note out and I wrote down, make the ask. And now I try never to get off the phone without making the ask So then that begs the question, okay, what do you say in order to get to the point of making the ask? And that's where my cold call opening line is going to come into play. But every call you're on, you need to figure out how can you get to that point where you make the ask, because you are ultimately selling time. You don't need to give them all the answers to the problems. You just need to build enough value to pique their interest, their curiosity, where they say, you know what? It's worth me taking 15 minutes. Imagine when somebody reaches out to you on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever it may be, and you don't understand what they're asking for. You don't know who they are, their company, anything. And they telemarketer and they say, hey, can you set up 20 minutes? I want to talk to you about a new insurance or phone plan. You, before they've even asked, you've immediately ruled them out. And that's how challenging it is to make the ask and set yourself up for success. But it's really important to make the ask. And as you're making more calls, you need to set up time and make the ask. And that's why I've said it about 7 times now. The final lesson you need to understand is you need to be indifferent towards the outcome. Nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems. When you're getting in a pool, speaking of another fun water analogy here, when you are jumping off a diving board into the pool, you're not necessarily picking and choosing, I'm going to land exactly there in the pool, unless you maybe have a floaty there. You are jumping and you are just getting in the pool. It's the same thing with cold calling. When you call, you should not say, oh, I need to set this meeting or I'm going to get fired, or, oh, if I set this meeting, I'm going to be so happy. Be indifferent towards wherever you land on the cold call. Ideally, you set the meeting, and it'll probably be a morale booster, but you can't get obsessed with that because most of the time, you're not going to set the meeting. And when you jump off that diving board into the pool, you don't know where you're going to land, but when you jump off the diving board, it's also too late to go back. Once you jump off the board, you have already accepted, I am getting in the water, I'm getting wet, I will be in that pool. It's the same thing with calling. Whenever you put your headset on, whenever you press that dial button, you need to accept that I'm going to get somebody on the other line. I am interrupting them. Sales is a contact sport. I'm going to go out of my way to make the ask for their time and figure out how do I set up this meeting. And those are the 3 lessons as I think about the macro experience of 50,000 cold calls. And when I say 50,000 calls, that means I have pressed dial, and they've either answered, they've not answered. A lot of them were no answers. A lot of them were voicemail. I've probably spent dozens of hours leaving voice messages over the course of all of these calls. And that's just me pressing call and making it happen. So you're now wondering, okay, Trent, what do I actually say on the call to set the meeting? And I wrote it down right here, and you probably could have seen it and read it the whole time. The reason. I start every call by saying, the reason I'm calling you is, if you think about getting called out of the blue, you don't know who the person is, you don't know what they want, you don't know what they stand for, and you're very confused because you don't want your time to be wasted. So psychologically, people want to know who you are and what do you want. So when you call the prospect, you of course can start out by saying, hey, this is Trent from Trent's YouTube channel. Can I have 30 seconds to tell you why I'm calling? You could say that. I think that that's a good opener because it's a permission-based opener, and that's what a lot of sales gurus will tell you. But I'm here to tell you, I've made more calls than almost all of them. I have nothing to sell you, so it doesn't really matter what you use. I'm sharing what I use, and I start every call by saying, the reason I'm calling you is, and I will insert something based on whatever feels right. So if I can see that they've opened my email, I'll say, the reason I'm calling you is that I'm following up on a recent email I sent you. Does Trent's YouTube channel ring a bell? The reason I'm calling you is I noticed that you oversee the like and subscribe button. Can you hit the like and subscribe button now because it really helps the channel? You need to figure out what reason to insert, say your reason, and then sometimes I'll even reiterate and we'll say, well, the reason I was calling you specifically is because we help other content moderation leaders with sales content that help you find more success sooner rather than later. Whatever it may be, start the reason I'm calling you is. I found that to be incredibly impactful. A couple bonus tips for those of you who are still around. And if you're still around, I want you to comment the cherry emoji down below in the comments. Comment the cherry emoji because as of recently, I'm trying to incorporate that in my emoji game, in my text messages. A couple bonus tips here are tone, pitch, inflection, pauses. I don't think I did a great job of taking pauses in this video, but when you make pauses strategically, they can create more impact and power around what you say, and it can resonate with people. Also, your tone, pitch, inflection is really important because oftentimes the prospect will say, well, I'm about to run into a meeting, you caught me at a bad time. They will try and rush you off the phone, so you need to do all you can to control the pace. And that comes with time and experience. So if you're sitting there saying, Trent, this information was helpful, I still have to go call tomorrow or today, whatever it may be, you have what it takes to be successful in this job. You just need to commit and be all in and go from 70% to 110%, because there's thousands of other reps on the exact same path you and I are on right now. They all want the same things: the money, the status, prestige, the promotions, the cars, the men, the women, whatever it may be. Everyone wants the same things. Everyone's working just as hard, if not harder, as you and I. So what is that X factor? And the X factor needs to be all in, following these lessons, showing up each and every day with persistence, with speed, with volume. You got to make the ask. You got to put yourself in uncomfortable situations because you might get rejected, and that's scary. And then finally, be indifferent towards the outcome. If you found value in today's video, hit the like button now, subscribe to the channel for more sales videos. If you enjoy sales trainings just like this one and hearing from influential sales leaders, individual contributors, learning best practices, I created Sales Prestige Podcast to help you get to the next level. I put out 2 episodes recently. Number 1 with the director of sales. I think you're really going to enjoy that one, Kyle. And then also with an enterprise software sales rep, both from large public SaaS companies that I adore and I like. So make sure to go watch those interviews. It'll be the first link in the description below. Happy calling.